Hello.
Hello.
And welcome to this week's episode of I Think I'm Human Too. We have the lovely Maddie. I'm so excited to have you. This is so wild to me. So give a little backstory about yourself if nobody listening knows anything about you. What is something that you would share to somebody new?
Yeah, so I grew up in a small town, Auburn, Alabama, and super close with my family. Have two younger sisters. Grew up in a Christian household. That was always a really, really big part of my story. I went to Auburn University for college and then graduated from Auburn with a degree in communications and knew I wanted to speak and write and kind of do all the things. But my first job after college was in foster care and adoption. And I thought that's honestly what I would end up doing forever. I'm not currently doing that right now, but hopefully I get back into that at some point. And then in the midst of that, someone applied me to go on The Bachelor without me knowing it.
Really?
And I found out and I was like, excuse me.
Was
And
it
then
a friend or a family?
It was a friend.
Funny.
Yeah.
And you really had no idea?
No, she didn't tell me. And months passed. Like, it didn't even happen quick. It was like months later.
Okay.
And so months passed by. I didn't know about it. I get a call from The Bachelor and thought it was a prank call, laughed and thought they were just messing with me, and then found out they were not, and they were very serious, and took months to pray about it with my family and just, is this, like, I knew it was going to be a big life change.
Yeah.
I knew a lot would come with it, and it was not what I imagined for myself. I had never really watched the show before. And like I said, I wanted to write, I wanted to speak, I wanted to be in foster care and adoption. And so going on a reality dating show felt far from all of those things. And so I really did not consider it at first, but through months of praying about it and just talking with my family about it, I felt led to do it. And so I said yes. I went on the show, and it was a wild experience. My whole life changed. And then
I cannot imagine. I cannot imagine.
I think it took me like truly a year and a half to like heal from a lot of the trauma of everything. But the interesting and cool part of it was it really gave me a platform and an opportunity to really encourage people with faith, with confidence, with identity, and so many different things. And it led to opportunities like me writing my first book and just having opportunities to speak. I had different churches and organizations and colleges reach out for me to come and speak. And so I'm really grateful for that. And I guess in a weird way, it also led me to like meeting my husband. And so, because I actually went on a podcast to talk about my book, and the person that was interviewing me on the podcast, this is for my first book, was friends with my husband. And after the podcast ended, he was like, there's this guy I want you to meet. And so that's literally like how I got set up on a date with Grant. So it all, through all the reroutes.
You should see my face right now. I'm like, okay, we had a little bit of a mic issue, but we're back. So.
But we're human too.
But we're human too.
So
hey!
No, I'm like the most human. I'm like, my face is peeling off, not having a hair day, walked in with like some chicken fingers. And I was like, here we are, guys.
No, I literally love it. And when they brought you up, I was like, Santino was like, how do you feel? And I was like, I love that. I literally love that. Everything that you do, you were just speaking on, like, example, you went to that conference and they said don't speak on your faith. Like, I could not imagine telling you don't speak on something. I think it's beautiful, and every single time I see your stuff, I love that you're out there advocating for something that I think is I don't want to say a dying industry, right? But I feel like a lot of people are straying away from religion and faith, and they're just living life aimlessly, and then you're just like waking up feeling unfulfilled. And okay, so why I am so obsessed with you. When I got this book, I read it. I then had to go, I'm obsessed with reading, and I was like 100%. And I've literally told, like, Santino can vouch for me. I've told everyone on this trip, I was like, you have to read this book. Seriously, I have so many notes from it. I think you are an amazing author and writer. And not only that, one thing that I loved about your writing is it is so relevant to anybody reading it, not having to be a faith-based person. Yeah. It does not matter what you believe in. I love that you speak and you're like, this is a safe space. You've talked about challenges and how you've overcome them, and it is truly amazing, and I love it. So I think anyone listening to this, I'm not joking. This is not because she's sitting in front of me. I really believe in this book, and I love it. And I'm so excited to read your first one.
Thank you. That was honestly my heart. Like, when I was thinking about the title of this book, like, I was going back and forth, because that's what's interesting about writing is I literally wrote this whole book and then I was like, what do I want to call it?
Yeah. No,
like
yeah.
I already had the whole book written and I was like, okay, now I got to come up with a great title and one that would be intriguing. And I really wanted to have the word everybody in it because I wanted it to be a message that it truly was for anybody, no matter your upbringing or your faith or what you're going through or your current stage of life. Like I really wanted this to be a message for everybody or for anybody. And so I love that you spoke to that. I tried really hard to even just like include like a lot of just, cultural norms and phrases and things that we all think through and struggle with and kind of just get presented with on a daily basis through social media. And so I love that you spoke to that. And I love that you read it. That makes me really happy.
No, I'm a big reader. So if you ever have like book recommendations, send them my way. But even like your references, you have Ariana Grande quotes and even saying like, I don't necessarily agree with the rest of the song, but pulling stuff that is culturally relevant. Not only that, you referenced the basketball. Like even my husband, I feel like he would read this book and could be able to take something from it. Obviously it is a very female forward book, but the morals and the values behind it are amazing. So I'm like so excited to sit here just because I'm like, I know who wrote this book. Like that's so exciting to me.
I love that. You're so sweet.
I'm not joking. And I'm not just saying that because you're sitting here, but I do have a couple questions for you. So a couple of things that you talked about in here. And I know you had stated before the mic issue, you were saying that it felt uncomfortable getting into the spotlight, especially being like a small town girly. But I do believe that everyone's here and we're a vessel on earth for different reasons. And that was God's way of giving you the platform so you could use your voice. Yeah. And I believe that wholeheartedly. I mean, social media is such a brutal but beautiful place and you're using it for so much good. So a couple of topics that you touched on that I want to bring up, and feel free to share anything on your end too. There's a couple different things that you talk about, like value, right? And that was, I think, around your college chapter of not getting into the sorority that you wanted. How did you get through that of sitting there like the denial and then being like, okay, well, I am a valuable person and like I do matter. How did you get through that mindset, especially being in that stage of life? Because there's a lot of young females that are very uncomfortable even seeing their worth, much less believing it. Yeah. How did you do that?
Yeah. I realized in that season of my life, not in the moment, I think it took some years for me to realize this, but I realized that so often we allow other people who don't know their worth to determine our worth. Because to be honest, so many of us are asking the question like, who am I? And why am I here? And am I hard to love? Is there something wrong with me? Like so many times we have those inward wrestles and thoughts and struggles. And I was having that in that moment when I didn't get picked and when I didn't get chosen by these certain sororities. And it left me feeling unworthy and unlovable because someone else didn't see my worth and value. And I realized it actually just triggered another feeling and emotion that I had when I was 16 years old. And I just found out that my boyfriend, who I was head over heels in love with and thought I was going to marry, I was 16. Yeah. But I was like, I'm going to marry this man. And I found out he cheated on me. And in that moment, I remember like running to a bathroom stall and like locking myself in and burying my head into my hands and just crying and just questioning everything about myself. Like I totally felt unworthy of being loved. I felt like there was something wrong with me and I was questioning my value because of his inability to see it. And I've just seen that happen so many times in my own life and people that I care about and other people, on social media and just that I meet, that we continue to allow other people to determine our worth and value. And I just got to a point where I was like, I am tired of doing this. Like I'm tired of leaving my worth and value in the hands of other people who may be able to see it or who may not be able to see it. And for me, that started with rooting myself in my faith and having my value and my worth be determined by something so much bigger than me and by something so much bigger than other people. Yeah. Because if it's determined by me or other people, it's going to often be, predicated off of feelings and emotions, which are always changing and never constant. And I wanted my value to be based on something so much more stable than feelings that are always changing and fleeting and, going up or down. Because some days I would wake up and still to this day, like I wake up and I'm like, yes, girl, you got it going on. Right. And then other days I'm like, oh girl, just lock yourself in the house. Yeah. Like you do not have it going on. Your hair is not hairing.
You do not have it going on.
You do not have it going on. Your hair is not hairing. You have acne all over your face. Like you're not cute. And so like in those moments, I have to really ask myself, like, Maddie, where does your confidence come from?
Yeah.
Where does your value come from? Because if it's only in how I'm feeling about myself right now, or what the mirror is telling me right now, then I'm going to be really disappointed and discouraged a lot of days. And so for me, I wanted something so much bigger than that. And so that was when I really started, rooting my identity and value in Jesus and finding that in him. And then through that, I was able to really grow confident and really walk into, rooms and relationships from this place of abundance rather than lack. I think so often we come into situations and we're hoping for people to complete us or tell us who we are or meet a need that we have. But what if we flip the script? And like, what if we walked into rooms and into relationships and we already know who we are and we already know the value that we have? And rather than asking, can you complete me and can you meet this need? We're rather saying, how can I encourage you and how can I add value to you? Because I already know my value. And so even going on something like The Bachelor, where there's so much competition and there's so much, just moments where I could compromise or change myself or look for, a rose to find value. Like I even had to remind myself in those moments, Maddie, your value is not in this rose. Maddie, your value is not in getting asked to go on a date. Maddie, your value is not in this guy or these girls or these people or an audience watching, saying that you're beautiful or saying that you're cool.
Yeah.
Your value is so much bigger than that. And so I think really for a lot of people, it's just asking the question, like, who am I and who do I believe that I am and where do I want that value and that confidence to come from? And again, for me, that was my faith and overcoming, that sorority moment. It really drove me to that decision. Like it really drove me to that decision of like, I want my value to be in my faith. And even though I may not be picked by this sorority, I already know I'm picked by a loving God. And so because of that, like I can be confident. And because of that, I can have peace, like no matter my circumstances. But of course there's moments where I'm like, I didn't always believe that. And I had to continue to remind myself. Yeah.
It's hard to see too, especially at that age. And I feel like that's such a pivotal stage for everybody in life of like, you could go any and every way. And I just love that you talked about that because I think there's a lot of young girls that go through that and they especially at the age we're all putting our value in other people of like, oh, did they like my picture? Did they want to go out with me? It's sad. And especially now getting further into the social media realm, again, it's beautiful, but brutal. And every single day I'm getting eaten alive. Like everyone gets eaten alive when you're in the spotlight.
Totally. Yeah.
But I talk a lot about that of like, no matter what stage you are in life, you're going to have haters, right? Yeah. That just is what it is. But it's just getting past them. And it's like, why are we paying attention to the 1% that's talking poorly? You know, let's talk about the 99% of things that I am doing well and like we're here to do. So I love that you touched on that in there.
I honestly love that you spoke on that too, about just like the pressures of social media and culture, because I do think that so often plays a role into our identity and our value and how we see ourselves is only through the lens of how other people see us. And we're putting out all this content and just asking the question, like, how are they going to accept it? Are they going to accept me? Are they going to like me? Are they going to follow me? And man, I just think that that's where it can get really dangerous, is when we're only living for the approval of people and we're only, liking ourselves or accepting ourselves based on other people's acceptance of us. I think that's just, at least for me, I wanted something, more steady than that, because like you said, like social media can be hard and it can be scary. It also can be beautiful, and there's, so much good that comes with it. But I know even for me, like, my haters and critics went back all the way to like high school. I had like a bully in high school, a girl who constantly picked on me, constantly told me.
And now it's their time to shine in your comment section.
And now, it's like so much is through social media. And it's like, why is there so much hate and anger and division in the world? And it upsets me. But at the same time, it just reminds me it's inevitable. Like we're going to have haters. We're going to have critics. We're going to have people that are unable to see our worth. And that's why it's so important that we see it. That's why it's so important that we know our worth and value, and we don't allow other people's inability to see it make us question ours.
This past year, I've had a lot of issues of always wanting a seat at a table, but then it's like you get the invite and you're at that table and you're like, I don't even want to be at this table. Why did I care so much? Did you ever have a time in the last few years, or even just in your life in general? Because I feel like, again, mine was just this last year of like, why do I even care? Did you ever have that where you're like, I need to give up the idea of what I should be versus like who I am? I have spoken about Natural Cycles time and time again. It is one of my favorite apps in my phone. I use it religiously and every single day. When I talk about cycle tracking, it is very, very important to me because I don't want to be on an invasive or a hormone or birth control. And also, it's not just for people who want to cycle track to prevent pregnancies. It's also helpful to have a pregnancy if you're trying to conceive. Natural Cycles was founded by a female physicist, which I absolutely love. And not only that, she was a Nobel Prize winning female physicist. There is so much science that goes into this and into your body and tracking it. So your temperature is what is most important when you're ovulating. That is how Natural Cycles knows if you're ovulating. Whether, again, you want to prevent or conceive, it does not matter. That's what the app is going off of, is your temperature. I absolutely love Natural Cycles. I've said it so many times and I will continue to praise from the top of my lungs. You can only get pregnant about 6 days a month. So knowing when you're ovulating is the utmost importance, again, to prevent or to conceive. So if you are wanting to try out Natural Cycles, I do have a code for Human 2 listeners, which I love. Anytime I can give you guys a code for something that I truly, truly love and I share nonstop, I am so excited. You can visit naturalcycles.app/Catherine or use code Catherine at naturalcycles.com for 20% off an annual subscription and a free thermometer. I do want to preface this by saying Natural Cycles is for 18 plus and does not protect against STIs.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, like my whole life.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like, that's a constant wrestle and struggle, for all of us, and it looks different for everybody. But I know at least for me, like there were multiple times in high school that I got left out. I didn't get included. And sometimes even intentionally, in college, even you're talking about like the sorority moment and even relationships not getting picked and, getting cheated on or getting broken up with. And even now, like, there's moments where I feel like I don't always fit in perfectly, in the Christian space or in the secular space. And I'm like in this weird in between of like, I didn't get a seat at either table. And I think that those are, very common feelings and emotions. And even though it might look different for us on the outside, for everyone listening, like it still leaves the same wrestles within. Like it's still the same feelings of like, I didn't get included, I didn't get invited. Or when I do, I realize like, this isn't even what I thought it was going to be.
That's always the worst.
Yeah. I was like, I put so much like
stress
on this thing and then I get it. And I'm like, oh, like it was so much less than what
guys.
Yeah, it was so much less than what I thought it would be. And like I can even say that so much to like speaking to, having a platform or having fame or whatever it may be. It's like I think our culture puts so much emphasis on like wanting to go viral and wanting to blow up and wanting to be somebody. And then I see these people who have way more followers than me and like who have like an immense amount of fame and success, and yet they're like looking at me with tears in their eyes, crying, and they're like, is there more?
Yeah.
And it's because like there is so much more. And like when we put everything, into wanting to be successful and wanting to make money and wanting to be famous, we realize like this is a dead end road. Like I'm not going to find satisfaction and contentment and my identity and value and purpose and happiness in this thing. And so, I definitely think there's been times and moments in my life and still that I have to fight of just like, not trying to put everything in like, wanting to be invited or wanting to be accepted, because oftentimes I realize it's not even what I thought it was.
It's like, I didn't even like this. Yeah. We were just having this conversation at dinner with another creator, and especially in the social media realm, you feel like you want to keep going up, and that's the way it goes. And so when you're in your lull, you're like, oh, I stink right now. Like something's wrong with me. What am I doing wrong? My content's not good. And something I always advocate for is if what you put out there is what you believe in, whether it flops or goes viral, it shouldn't matter because you feel confident in what you said. And I love that everything that you put out there is all positive. It's all amazing. I do follow you now. I'm like, yay, I love it. I'm like, everything you do, I'm like, all your videos, everything is so encouraging, even and real too, where you're like, hey, I've had some hardships. This is what I'm going through mentally. And you continue to speak on it. Another thing in your book, you talked about vulnerability, but also protection, like being protective of your heart. And I've gone through that too, especially with like breakups and past, and now we're married. That's the way the world goes. But where did you find that fine line? Because they have to integrate, but they're two totally different things.
Yeah.
How did you find that? Like, do that fine line of meshing to be protected, but also to be vulnerable to find your husband?
Yeah. Yeah. So I talk about in the book, like how powerful feelings and emotions are. Like, I think when we run from them or we hide from them, like we're only doing ourselves a disservice, which I will be the first to say, feelings scare me. And so I was the person who tried to run from them and hide from them, but we only do a disservice because putting up walls around our hearts not only keeps out all the bad, but it also keeps out all the good. We keep ourselves from experiencing just the depths that you can experience in friendships and in a romantic relationship and just in all that life has to offer. And so that's why you don't want to run and hide from them, but you also don't want to be led by them because feelings are always changing and feelings are never the same and they're never constant. Like one day you'll feel really good about your life. The next day you'll be questioning why you're even here on this earth. One day you'll be really confident in all your relationships. The next day you'll be like, I'm so lonely. I have no friends. And it's just because our feelings are always changing. They're never the same. And so that's why feelings make bad leaders. And so it's finding that middle ground of, you know, seeing feelings can be used for good. And also seeing that feelings don't make good leaders and you shouldn't always follow them. But being aware of them is really important. And so for me, it's finding that balance and realizing at the end of the day, for me, I'm not led by my feelings and emotions. I'm led by my convictions. I'm led by the truth in which I build my life upon. I'm led by, just like truth and conviction rather than I think feelings and emotions, which I think is super important. But I think feelings is what gives us the opportunity to even have like these conversations. You know, it gives us empathy for one another. It helps us connect to each other. And feelings are always indicators. Like they always are pointing to something bigger. Like if we really start paying attention to our feelings and emotions, we realize that our feelings are indicators pointing to like where we're experiencing in our life lack or abundance. Yeah. And so like it's pointing to, okay, right now, if I'm feeling this way about myself, maybe there's something deeper going on. Like maybe there's something I need to actually like get to the root of and figure out in myself rather than just like go off of these emotions, but actually like getting to the root of the problem. And then also like where we're experiencing abundance, like where we see like, oh, I'm happy and I feel peace. And it's like, okay, that's because like I have community in my life and because I'm taking care of myself, I'm eating healthy. Right. And so it's like, you can start seeing that our feelings are always pointing to something so much deeper.
Speak on that. Cause I loved that. And I need even that personal advice. How do you, cause as females, we just naturally are more emotional, right? Yeah. Sometimes even if, cause I know that their emotions are just up and down, it is what it is, but when you're in it and it's overwhelmingly emotional, what is like your tactic or routine to get out of it and get back to a level head?
Oh gosh, for me, the worst is like when I'm mad, because like when I'm mad, that emotion for me is when it's the hardest for me to like break that. And so I'll just speak from that place and be real and vulnerable about that. So usually when I get in that headspace, like truly like what I try to do, and I'm not always great at this, but what I really try to do is just take a beat and take a second. And my biggest piece of advice is to respond rather than react. Response is when you filter it through truth and conviction and what you value most over what you want right now in this moment. Because sometimes in a moment, your feelings are going to lie to you because you're going off of someone else's response or someone else's reaction.
And your ego.
Your ego, your pride, your insecurities, whatever it may be, right? And if you react and you just go off of whatever you're feeling, you might end up saying something you really very much regret. And I will be the first to say that happens to me.
Everybody.
And so what I've tried to train myself is, Maddie, don't just react. Don't just go off of whatever you feel right now, but truly like take a second. Sometimes it's 30 minutes. Sometimes it's 2 hours. Sometimes it's 5 minutes, but just take however much time I need, like pray, sit there, think about it. Just like whatever you got to do. Sometimes I honestly will open up my Bible. Sometimes I'll call a friend, whatever I got to do to just like take a second and be like, how can I respond in a way that truly shows what I value and also is a way that can be received to the other person. Because like sometimes I'll just react, and what I realize is not only am I not speaking to what I value, but I'm also just hurting him. And he's not even able. I'm speaking about my husband right now. I'm actually like this is a therapy moment.
Seriously.
I'm like, so when we get in fights,
so when I'm angry, I don't throw anything.
No, truly, I'm like, and then he can't even hear me, and we get nowhere. It's like in my anger, I'm just trying to be right, and I'm trying to prove a point, but I'm not really getting to the root of what I'm feeling, and he's not even able to receive it. And so no one's winning. No one's winning. And so what I've learned is the best thing to do, whether you're in heartbreak, you're sad, you're upset, you're questioning your value, your purpose, your life on this earth, or you know, are going through loneliness or friendship problems, or you're angry or whatever it may be, is just like taking a second, filtering it through your values. What do I value most? What is the truth in which I build my life on? You know, and getting back to that place and then making decisions from there, I think is so, so important. And it's the wisest thing that we'll be able to do, is to not react, but to respond, and to respond with conviction and value rather than react with emotion and feeling. And so I always try to filter it through that. Sometimes I win, and
you're
sometimes I lose.
You're a good wife, Maddie. You're a good wife.
He's like, let's talk about that more.
Yeah, he's like,
that happens 10% of the time. Yeah. No, I'm growing in it. And I think I've learned a ton. I mean, we've been married only for a year.
Yeah.
And I've learned a ton, like the first 6 months of marriage. And again, this filters even into friendship. This filters into family dynamic and relationship. I'm super close with my mom. And, you know, we would get into these like big fights sometimes because I would just react and I would just go off of whatever I was feeling. But I've learned as I've matured and gotten older, it's so much more wise. And I have such better relationships when I choose to respond rather than react.
I love that. I need to listen to I'm going to listen to that back every night before bed. I'm like, because it's hard. And we've been married just over a year, I think a year and a half now. And it is hard, especially when you find a person, you start living with them and you're like, okay, now marriage is a different title, which is kind of an identity crisis in and of itself. You're like, oh, I'm a wife now. Like, what does this mean? And then you go through, I don't want to just be a wife. Like, I still want to be a human. I still want to be my own thing. And I think that's beautiful how you said that. And it is so true. It shows in all of your relationships too. And as soon as you can like figure out how to speak and communicate, and not only that, but speak and communicate in the way that they receive, it's insane. And once you got that under your belt, you're like, I can do anything in the world.
Totally. And to get to the root, I think having self-awareness too, to get to the root of like, what actually am I feeling right now? Because the fruit like of what other people can see is anger, but what's actually like the root insecurity or fear, you know? Is it like, I don't want to be rejected? Is it that I'm afraid of being controlled? Is it that I'm scared of, you know, whatever it may be? It's like, let me get to the actual root of what I'm feeling and the lie that I'm believing, and let me address that and respond and share that in a way in which he can hear. Because if I actually tell, you know, again, just using my husband as example, if I actually tell him like, hey, I'm really scared that you're going to reject me, he's going to respond to that so much better than me acting a fool and being angry, and he doesn't even know why I'm angry. You know,
and then you just get even more angry,
and then I just get more angry, and he
understanding.
doesn't know how to care for me because I haven't been honest and vulnerable about what I'm actually feeling and going through. And so I think that's what is so important in our relationship, is like, be honest. That's how like our relationships are going to grow deeper, but then also have respect and value for yourself and the person that you care about, to not only respond in honesty, but to respond after you've taken time to, you know, really think through, is this going to be beneficial? Is this going to be helpful? What's the root of the issue?
Right.
And, you know, are these my values?
I love it. Did you guys go to a therapy? Did you guys go to, like, how did you guys come to that conclusion? Did you sit down on one-on-one? What did it look like for you two?
Talking about our feelings.
Yeah. Cause it's hard. It is hard.
No, I mean, we're not currently doing therapy. We did premarital counseling before we got married. I mean, truly, I think the biggest thing for both of us is really having like individual mentors and accountability, like friendships and partners in our life. And so like, I have like my best friends and mentors in my life that, you know, oftentimes I'm going to and talking through things, and sometimes processing with them before I even bring it to him. Because if I say it just when I'm feeling it, then it's going to be more hurtful than helpful. And so having someone that I can process through it with, I've learned is really beneficial. And not for everything. That's, you know, you don't have to always follow that formula. But yeah, I found that to be super helpful. So I think for us, just having honestly like mentors and friendships in our life. We're a part of a local church here in Waco, and we're a part of like a church, like small group or community group. And that has just been super cool. Like doing life with people consistently. And there's this thing that we do, like the girls will separate and the guys will separate. And so when I'm meeting with the girls, there's like 4 other girls in my group, and we go around and we have this time of like confession. And we just like confess like, hey, here's what I did this week. That was pretty crappy of me.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not proud of it. Here's what I said to my spouse, or here's what I thought about this person, or here's how I felt in this moment. And we confess, and then we pray over each other. And I found that to honestly be so healing to me, but it also like holds me accountable, because I know like, oh, next week I'm going to have to confess.
And they'll ask, they'll be like, how'd this go?
And so if I act like a crazy person right now, like I had that happen like 3 weeks ago, I acted like a crazy person and I reacted to Grant rather than responded to Grant. I didn't take my own advice, and I had to confess it to my, my community group the next week. And they were like, ooh,
That was tough.
That's tough. Was pretty bad, Maddie. And I was like, yeah,
it was.
Guys,
Thank you.
It wasn't my best. And so there is a form, I think, not only of like safety within the right type of like friendships and, you know, mentorship, but I think there's also that level of like accountability. Like those people are able to hold you accountable and really like push you and make you a better person too.
We handle it the same way. I wanted to ask just to see what you guys did. And I think it's so important to anybody listening. I say this all the time, especially at a younger age. Who you surround yourself with is very important too. Absolutely. Because a lot of the time back into the day, 19 to 22, you would go to your girlfriends, and if they didn't have the good intentions, they were going to just give you advice, whatever benefited them the most, whether they didn't like your boyfriend or whatever the case may be. But now, and I felt uncomfortable being like, oh, I'm sharing details, and like they're going to be mad and they're not going to like my boyfriend anymore or whatever. And now I'm like, I can go to my mom and I can go to my friends, because I'm like, I know that we have the same morals and values, and we're going to come to they're not like, oh, leave him, you know, it's more, and they're not judging. It's just like, how can we all, because we all know what the end goal is of just getting through this. I think it's important to anyone listening, if you don't have somebody in your circle that knows your goals and your intentions, you should start looking for people that align with those, because that's very important.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Especially in relationships, because you're like, you do need an outsider perspective, or sometimes you're like, am I wrong for being mad about this? Or yes, sometimes you are and sometimes you're not, but.
Oh my gosh. I've seen in my life, like friends make or break you. Like the people you choose to do life with make or break you, and they will push you closer to the person that you want to be or further away from it.
Absolutely.
There's no in between. Like there's no stagnant friendships. Like they're either making you better or making you worse. And so like really checking your surroundings. Like there's been so many times in my life where I chose to be around people that were just like fun or popular or cool or whatever. And, you know, I compromised my values. I started becoming a person that I wasn't proud of, and making decisions that I went on to regret. And I have like gotten to a place over the last like 4 or 5 years where I'm just like, it's not worth it. Like I want to be surrounded by people that, like you said, we have the same values and morals, and they're going to be able, like for me, to push me closer to Jesus and closer to the purpose like that I have on my life. Like I want to reach that purpose and, you know, become the best version of myself every day. And so finding those people is so important. I'm so glad that you said that.
Absolutely. It's like a compass, and it's like you all want to be going in the same direction. If we're all in this boat, if we're all at the same table, we need to know where we're going, instead of just being like, everyone's just going in circles and we're like, okay,
totally,
we're not going to get anywhere ever. You also spoke about writing down a quick little list of your morals and your values, or your compass, or whatever you want to say. And you talked a lot about like what you would give up. Say a guy asked you on a date or something, and that wasn't on the list of things. You wouldn't give up things that you loved. Or maybe I'm butchering that, but there was something where you were like, you don't want to give up the things that you love just for a guy or for a fun time.
Totally.
Because you were pretty young when you figured that out.
Yeah.
I wish I knew that, because I wish I literally want a list by my bed now of like, because I'm a yes girl, and then sometimes I leave feeling drained because I just wanted to go and it was fun, and I love meeting people, but you drain quickly that way.
Yeah, which I think too, in knowing about yourself that you're a yes girl, I think something that's been even helpful, as we were just talking about friendships, it's like surrounding yourself with people that aren't yes people, that like will be like I have people in my life that literally will be like, Maddie, that wasn't cute, and you don't need to do that again. Or Maddie, this was not in line with your values. You're better than that. And I think having people in our life that will call us out and like just kind of set us straight is really important. And I think that even played a role into, you know, me having a list or an idea of like what I wanted to look for in a relationship, and what I wanted to, you know, wait for in someone. Was I had people around me that would hold me accountable to that. So yeah, I think I was in college when I realized, okay, there is going to be a lot of moments where my emotions are going to lie to me, where pressures are going to feel overpowering, and there's going to be so many temptations around me. And it's going to be really hard for me to like stand firm in what I value the most. And so I knew, like, outside of like the pressure of a moment, alone in my room by myself, I needed to decide, like, what do I value most, and make those decisions, like, to pre-decide before the moment. And so for me, I like sat down and I was like, okay, Madi, when you find yourself in this situation, this is how you're going to respond. You know, when you start wanting to like date, this is the kind of person that you're, you know, going to date, and really starting to make those decisions, because if I didn't have that moment, then I would find myself in situations and being like, oh, he's cute, so it's fine.
Yeah,
or like,
it's okay.
They're doing it, so whatever, you know? And when I made those decisions, that was when I would later be like, man, I have so much shame now. I have so much regret now. And it just wasn't worth it to me. And so I wanted to pre-decide, outside of the heat and pressure of a moment, who I really wanted to be, who I wanted to end up with one day, if that be God's will for me, and, you know, the kind of life I wanted to live. Like, I wanted to know the decisions that I was going to make ahead of time. Obviously, we don't know, like, the moments that are going to come, the pressures that are going to come, the decisions we're going to have to make, but we can do as best a job as we can to prepare before they come, and to really just make up your mind, like, what do I value most? And so for me, I started like writing that list down, you know, in college, and I've definitely edited it over the years.
Absolutely.
And it
Seasons
definitely, you know,
change.
and there were moments where I'm like, it was so superficial, but it's fine.
Yeah.
You know, and so it was definitely like, has to be a basketball player, has to be, you know,
6'5" or nothing.
No, literally, or I'm out, or I walk.
Goodbye.
And so those have definitely changed. And I think at the end of the day, you know, what I landed on, I talked about in my book, were kind of what I called my 3 C's. And the first was conviction. So like, what are his convictions? Is he a man? Like for me, it was like, is he a man of conviction? Is he someone who isn't just like easily led by culture, or easily led by his feelings, or easily led by the crowd? Like, is he someone who is led by his convictions, know what he wants, knows what he values, and is firm in that? And I wanted him to have like a faith of his own, and it not just be like his family's faith, or like because of how he grew up.
He was born into it.
Yeah. Like, I wanted him to have like his own faith. And so that was super, super important to me. The second C was character, just like a man of good character. Is he a man of his word? Does he have integrity? Is he trustworthy? Is he loyal? Those were just, you know, some character traits that were super, super important to me. And I kind of wrote out a few. And then the third was chemistry. Yeah, that was kind of like, you know, the service level one, but that's important.
No, that's very important.
I'm like, I want to be, you know, and it's like,
you can't have the ick all day, every day, like, and make it work. It just doesn't happen.
Right. I mean, like for me, I wanted to like looking at the face that I was going to be sleeping next to for the rest of my life. And within that, knowing also though, that it wasn't the most important thing to me. Like, it was the third thing on my list. It wasn't like, oh, you have to. And the cool thing about Grant and I is we got set up on a blind date. So it wasn't like we were in this room or on social media and everything was based off of looks. It was like, I got set up on a date with you. So like, this is either going to go good or bad, you know?
It's you with me or what?
Yeah. Like, we're either in or out. And so I was thankful for that though, because neither of us, you know, had an opportunity to like size the other person up. It wasn't like, oh, you have this or you look like this. And so like, I'm interested. It was just like, somebody thought we had like similar values and vision for our life, and like they set us up on a date, and so, you know, like, let's go for it. And I'm really grateful for that, because I learned that like, yes, I was attracted to Grant, but the most attractive thing about Grant to me was his joy, and was his love for God, and was the way he treated people. Like, those were the most attractive things about me. Like, it wasn't like his style or his charisma or his, which I think a lot of times we can get caught up in. It was just like, man, the way he like treats people and makes me laugh, and like is so fun, but also like has vision for his life and has purpose for his life, was so attractive to me. And so like, I left my first date with him and I was like, I'm going to marry him. Yeah. I knew, like, I literally called my mom and I was like, that's my husband. Yeah. I just knew.
I have a question on that, because I feel the same way about my husband. And a lot of girlfriends don't have that experience. They have like, we've put in the hard work. And I'm like, well, granted, every marriage is a lot of hard work.
Totally. Yeah.
No matter what. But I do feel very blessed knowing we kind of had it easy. I was like, yeah, we have some work, but it was like, I just knew right away. How do you give advice to somebody where it's like, you know that they're not with the right people, whether it be a friend or a person? Because I feel like a lot of times people get so hung up on giving up, and they don't want to give up on somebody, because it's like, what if I give up on them and the next one's not as good, you know? How do you get through that of knowing like this is just not meant for me and it's not meant to be? What advice would you give to somebody that's going through that?
I mean, gosh, I would even just say if there's a lack of peace and some hesitancy in your heart, like lean into that. Don't run from that.
I say that all the time. Thank you for saying that.
No, because I think it's so often we try and justify it. Like we're like, oh, but there's this, or what if I don't find someone else, or what if I don't end up happy, and we're so afraid of losing something right now, and instead of being willing to lose the right now for what may come later. And what we don't realize is like sometimes what we lose right now in the moment is so that we can gain the absolute best later.
Absolutely.
And we have to be willing to walk away from something that's just okay, knowing that, hey, maybe there's God's best later. And so for me, there's been multiple moments where, I mean, I dated a guy for 4 years in college, out of college, and I was so head over heels in love. Like I wanted to be with this person. We'd been dating for forever, like close with each other's families. I mean, everything was there except peace. Like I did not have a peace about it. And we were at that crossroads moment of like, we're either about to break up or get engaged. Like we've been dating for 4 years. We're out of college. Like we know, you know.
And then you get embarrassed of like, if we break up. Like
then everyone's going to be like, you know, and we were the couple that so many people came to for like advice. I think sometimes we care so much about getting out of relationships because of what other people are going to think. And man, it's just like not worth it to like compromise and stay in something that you don't have a peace about just because you fear, you know, the outcome or the response to it. And so for me, I had to trust like, okay, I don't have peace about it and I'm going to have to break up with this person and it may really, really hurt. And it did, like for a year, like it was really hard. Did I cry myself to sleep every night? Absolutely. I did every night. Did I ask multiple times like, God, this feels unfair. Will I ever be happy again? Absolutely. Like, I mean, that's just me being so honest and real. There were so many moments where I'm like, this is so hard. And it feels like I got the short end of the stick.
And then you look at old photos and you're like, did I make the right choice?
Yeah. And then, then you start reminiscing. But then it's like you get to this point where you look back and you're like, oh, thank you, God.
Thank you, God.
Thank you, God. Thank you, God, for not letting me settle for less than your very best. Thank you, God, for not answering every single prayer. Thank you, God, for the closed doors and the not right nows and the no's and the rejections, because look at where I'm at now. Yeah. Like, look at where I'm at now. And not only because of the outcome of like, oh, and like people being like, oh, well, now you're married and this or that. It's like beyond that. It's like the person I've become.
The lessons that I learned.
That I've gained. Like the lessons I've learned. The friendships that I've made. Like the way that it so pushed me out of my comfort zone and like made me be dependent on something bigger than myself and bigger than like some earthly relationship. Like that pushed me so much when we ended that relationship to a point like that was one of the hardest seasons of my life. But I look back and I'm like, that was the most necessary season of my life. Like I am who I am today because of that moment. Yeah. And like, you know, people even ask me, you know, how are you able to go on reality TV and like stand firm in your faith and in your values? And truly I'm like that season, probably that season after that breakup, because that was where my faith became so real and it became so mine. And I had to really ask myself, like, do I still believe in God when my, you know, circumstances don't work out the way that I want them to? And like things don't happen the way that I want them to? Am I still going to choose to have faith? Am I still going to choose, you know, to be all in with this? And my answer was yes. And so my faith just continued to grow and, you know, my confidence continued to grow, and it did eventually like lead to God's best. And so even like my wedding day, like I remember like waking up that morning and just hitting my knees and like thanking God.
The utmost peace you could ever
and
feel.
had so much peace. Yeah. And like, that doesn't mean it's been easy. Like there's been so many moments. I mean, Grant and I are two imperfect people, you know? And so like, absolutely there's moments where it's hard, even like before we got married, even within marriage. I never want to paint this picture like it's been perfect. It definitely has not. But there's always been peace. Like there's always been peace, and God has always been the center of it. And so because of that, like it has been so worth it.
Yeah. That is something I wish upon everybody's relationship, or even just their own individualness. I just wish you could feel peace, you know, because it is so hard when you have never felt it and you just think it doesn't exist. And then when you get there, you're like, oh my gosh, that's insane. And I think that what I love about your book is it's not even just necessarily relationship based. It's about everything, and everything that you just said, even like the hardships you go through. Do you ever now when you feel, so me specifically, I've been through some stuff, right? And then you go through your head of like, this is the worst thing I've ever been through. I can't believe this has happened. And now I look back, and any hardship that hits our plate, I actually feel good about. And I know that sounds silly, but I really do sit here and I'm like, losing my dad was the worst thing that's ever happened, right? And people were like, everything happens for a reason. And I didn't want to hear that right away.
Totally.
And now I look back and I'm like, those hardships we had to go through to get to where we are, to be able to speak to people about things that we've been through. And I love that you talk about that in your book of like, it's not just necessarily love.
Yeah.
Do you feel like even when you get hit with like a bus, you're just still, we're so blessed. Do you ever say that and you just feel good about situations now?
I definitely would say yes and no.
Okay.
I think there's moments where I'm like,
it's hard. It's for sure
like
hard.
I want to just like be done with everything. And you know, it's really hard. And then I think there's moments where I'm like, man, everything does happen for a reason. I am, you know, at peace. I am blessed. I am grateful. And, you know, what I've learned too is like the things that we learn in this season prepare us for the seasons to come.
Yes.
You know, it's like the trials and the sufferings and the things pressures that I'm faced with right now is preparing me to have the strength to overcome in the future. Mm-hmm. And so we're constantly learning things and going through things that are just going to continue to grow us and stretch us and prepare for us what's to come. And I'm really, really grateful. Like I'm so grateful for that season, you know, right before like that year after my breakup, that I really had to struggle and wrestle, because then I went on The Bachelor and I got ripped apart by millions of people.
I could not imagine.
I had to have that year of like isolation and heartbreak, and God really like building me up to be like strong.
Yeah, refocusing.
And just being like, okay, where does your strength come from, Madi? Where does your confidence come from, Madi? Where, like, what do you value most, Madi? And asking myself those questions, because then I went on national TV and all those things got picked apart. And so again, I had to remind myself, where does your confidence come from, Madi? Where does your strength come from, Madi? Because in those seasons, it's like, it's so easy to like compromise, change, cower back, you know, or just give in. And it's like, I just had to keep going back to those moments.
I love that you touched on that. Okay. Sorry, I just cut you off.
No.
I like try really hard not to cut people off, but when you brought that up, so I did not watch The Bachelor at all. I've never been a Bachelor girl for anything, but so my girlfriend did watch your season, the one you just met here, Savannah. And she said, you want to know my favorite part about Madi? And I was like, what? And she's like, you could tell that even with everything going on in the chaos, she stuck to her morals and her values, and she put them at the forefront of her season. So again, I'm boosting you when I tell you, I love that you're out there doing that on your social medias and you're advocating for not changing, because that's something that I really struggle with, especially in today's culture of like, people are so wishy-washy and they sway with whoever they're around. Yeah. And it drives me nuts, because I'm like, it's okay if we all have different opinions. You and I can sit here and still have a conversation. We might not agree, but at the end of the day, it's the respect and the communication. And like, we're never going to have the same desires. Your list is going to be different than my list. And I just love that you're out there advocating all the time for just staying true to yourself and really just being grounded in that. Yeah. So I'm proud of you for that, truly.
Totally. Thank you. Thank you. And I think realizing too that like, our act of courage could lead to someone else's act of courage. Yes. And our standing firm could lead to someone else's standing firm. And our staying true to ourselves could lead to someone else's staying true to themselves. And I think we don't realize like, just like the power of like we and like togetherness and community and unity, because it's like, that is how we overcome a lot, is just like our testimonies and saying like, hey, I've struggled in this, but this is how I overcame. And then like that act of like vulnerability or courage could lead to someone else's breakthrough. And it's realizing like, okay, I, one, should just always be honest, but two, like stand firm in who I am and be true to myself, because that could give someone else the courage to do so too. And there is no one else on this planet like you. There is no one else on this planet like me. No one has your story. No one has my story. Yeah. And people are encouraged by your story and people are encouraged by my story, but we all have a story. Like we all have a story to tell. And you know, there's something that we could all learn from each other. And so just like knowing that your story is worth telling, and be someone who, you know, stands true to that, because your story is beautiful. Yeah.
And I love that everyone can relate differently too. Like there's things that you've gone through that I can't speak on. And that was why I wanted this safe space to be, I can't go through everything in the world, you know, but I can talk to people who have, and they can share their story. I don't believe that loneliness is a real thing. I feel like it's a feeling, but it's just because not everybody at your table has been through what you've been through, but there's a million others. You just got to speak on it and just bring it up and be vulnerable and be real and raw and be like, this is what's going on. And 9 times out of 10, there's going to be somebody really close to you that's like, oh, I've been through this, or I know someone directly. And it's insane. I love the work that you've put in and the word that you're sharing. Truly, I'm like in awe. I'm like, I fangirl over this book alone. I'm like, yay, I love this. But do you have anything that you would want to share out of your story, that, because you can only get a small portion of people online. What's something that you would want to share with Human 2 listeners that you could get to them if they don't follow you?
Yeah. Gosh, so many things. There's so much that I've learned over the years, and I am still learning, and I am so far from perfect. But I'm so grateful that I serve, like, and I am committed to a perfect God, and he has truly helped me, like, see myself and see the world through just such a different lens. And I promise I've been the person who has tried to find my worth and value in relationships and in friendships and in people and things and money and fame and literally anything you can imagine. And it's just continued to leave me empty. And the day that I decided to go all in with Jesus was the day that changed my life forever. And I realized, like, I'm not ever going to find what I'm looking for until, like, I find him. And so, like, even my subtitle of this book is What You're Looking For Is Already Yours, because I believe, like, God's love is available to all of us, and it's just up to us to fully receive it and to accept
Let
that
go
invitation.
and let God.
Yeah, let go and let God. And I promise you, like, he will change your whole entire life. Like, if you just try it out. Just try it out. Like, give me 21 days and just, like, pray, read the Bible, find a church, and just see what God does. Like, I know a lot of people are like, no, that's weird. And I'm like, but you've tried everything else.
Yeah.
So just try.
Just try this, okay?
Just try.
Nothing else is working.
Nothing
Give it a
else
shot.
is working. You've tried alcohol. You've tried relationships. You've
tried alcohol.
You've tried everything, okay? So just try Jesus and just let me know how it goes. And yeah, I hope that some of you pick up this book, The Love Everybody Wants, and that you realize, yeah, what you're looking for is already yours. And it's not found in a spouse, and it's not found in a person. It's found in a relationship with Jesus. And that's going to ultimately be what gives you the hope, the peace, the identity, the value, the courage, and everything else that you're looking for. And that's been my story.
I love it. Well, thank you for sharing. Okay, one last thing. Where can we get this book? I got mine on Amazon.
Okay. Yeah, you can get it.
You're at Target.
Anywhere books are sold. It's at like all your bookstores if you want to go in person. If you like going to, like, bookstores in person, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, Target, Walmart. But it's also on Amazon. I also have a website, theloveeverybodywants.com. So
she's everywhere. You can find her anywhere. And then you also have socials as well. So what's your handle on socials?
It's at Madi Prew, MADIPREW. Grant's like, when are you going to add that trout? And
right. I'm like, never. I'm like, you already got it legally. You don't need it socially. Okay.
Exactly. So TikTok and Instagram are both Madi Prew.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for being on. I'm so excited. When she was like, I don't know, for people listening, we are in Waco, Texas, and you're the first person we ever traveled for. So I'm like,
I feel so honored.
No, I'm excited. I was like, heck yeah.
Oh, this has been so fun. And they're literally in my hometown. They're like 5 minutes away from Magnolia. And I'm like, you guys are just doing it right. You got to go over to Magnolia and have a blast.
we will go there after this. And then you said you go up to Dallas a lot. So if we ever move out to Dallas, we'll have to get back together.
Let's go. I love that.
Well, thank you. And we will see you guys next week.